Bom dia. I'm watching my first ever Brazilian film, The Iconic City of God. I've never watched this movie. I only know it's like a gang movie with a love story, I think, wrapped up into it. I didn't want to know too much, and we're going to watch my first ever Brazilian film. Let's go. It's got guns like that in Brazil?
Uma fotografia podia mudar minha vida. Mas na cidade de Deus, se correr o bicho pega. Pois aquele que habita no esconderijo do Altíssimo, a sombra do presente descansará. O assalto do motel entrou para a história como o mais sangrento daquela época. Depois desse dia, cada bandido...
He's getting a relaxer. That's so funny. Oh no, he's dyeing his hair. I thought he was getting a relaxer. Uh-oh, he about to take your girl. Uh-oh. Oh, he just want to be normal. Oh, he feeling himself. He got some new dread. We dye his hair. They about to start laughing.
Virei playboy.
Aí, bandidagem, tem um recado urgente pra dar pra vocês. Tomem cuidado, hein? Cocota bota ovo quando balança a bundinha no baile.
I know. Okay, I'm gonna finish this movie. I'm taking notes because there's a lot of things I want to talk about. So far, I love the movie. This movie is so beautiful. Okay, I'm gonna finish the movie and then we're gonna come back with my notes and what I got to say about it. Oh my god, I love this movie. I just finished City of God, and I just want to say I have been completely blindsided at the severity of how I was gonna feel when I watched this film. I read the quick little synopsis of what the plot was. I thought it was going to be just a regular drug movie that is kind of centered around a love story, because the picture of City of God is like the main poster is this couple. You know, that's what it looks like, right? These teenagers that are in love at the beach. So I'm thinking it's going to be a love story about this couple in the midst of like the crack epidemic. And I was like, I got into this. I'm like, oh, this ain't just one of them. This one of them. Okay. So I want to start off by reading this Reddit thread about the movie, about people's, another person just watched the movie. This is like years ago, but they give up their thoughts on it, and then somebody responds. I'm going to post it on here and leave the link in the bio. Leave the link below if you want to read it yourself, if you don't want to hear me read it. But I want to read it, and then I want to get into my personal notes on the movie, because I was blindsided by how I was going to feel when I watched this movie. So I'm going to read it. You can skip it if you want to and just pause and read it, or just read the thread later and move on. The title, I watched City of Gods for the first time earlier today. I'm very tired right now, so I'm going to be so brief with this and then go to sleep. I really enjoyed this film. It's wonderful. Enjoyed is a bit strange because what happens in the film is so bleak. Like, one of the last scenes is just like 20 shots of dead bodies lying on the streets. It's grim. Like, you'll see 5 years have their feet shot. Probably 5 people. 5 people have their feet shot. People get R'd. Like, every other person is murdered. For those who don't know, it's like every Scorsese movie, but in Brazil. That's not a bad thing. It's on the same level of Goodfellas or something. The plot is followed. It depicts the growth of organized crime in City of God, suburb of Rio de Janeiro, between the end of the 1960s and the beginning of the 1980s, with the closure of the film depicting the war between the drug dealer Lil Zay and vigilante turned criminal Knockout Ned. The structure was weird and fascinating. They briefly introduce a character and essentially just be like, nah, forget them for a minute and focus on something else before we get to explaining who they are later. I think it saves the film from being overly convoluted, because if this was done poorly and characters weren't fully introduced until it was 100% necessary, you get something like the first hour of Suicide Squad. The main gang leader, Lose, we follow is fascinating. The way he gunned down an entire hotel of people at the age of 10 with a historically laugh throughout was terrifying. It was interesting how he couldn't function as an actual person in a party scene. It showed how he struggled to talk to girls and how he had borderline temper tantrum when his best friend leads the gang. It's almost like Lose can't function without the violence. That's what he resorts to in the party. He acts up and this causes said friend to get shot. He's emotionally immature. The cinematography was vibrant and stylized. I liked it. The movie could have been so dull and lifeless if they muted all the colors, used blue filter, and tried to be gritty, not allowing the characters to have fun. The movie feels more realistic in the sense that life isn't edgy, grim, dark thing. Well, most of the time it isn't. Sometimes it's vibrant, cool music and dancing, and sometimes people die. I think the vibrant colors could almost represent how the characters see the world. All any of these people know is violent, crime-ridden worlds of the slums of Brazil. They didn't grow up in the suburbs of England or something. They see this world as vibrant and cool because there's no way out to make something of yourself. At the end, a group of 10-year-olds gun down Lose and aim to take over his empire, which shows the cycle of life there, which I'm going to insist proves my point. Okay, I'm going to read these two responses to it and then we'll move on. One of the remarkable things I noticed about Brazilian cinema is the seeming lack of horror as an emotion. Sadness, despair, and tragedy are recognized, but not in the kind of stark existential outrage that we see in true-to-life American films about horrific crimes, which is not to say it isn't there. But it would seem culture sharpens the perception of things while smoothing others. The jaggedness of horror and real-life emotion seems to not focus in Brazilian cinema or those of other Latin scenes. Scorsese is an interesting case to bring up because his films are too typically devoid of the visceral revulsion at violence that tends to go with true crime depictions. It's almost an ironic function in vibrancy that the viewpoint is so full of life that it itself less affected by its destruction and not brittle enough in spirit to be shattered even by the worst atrocities. Characters in Italian, Brazilian, and other Latin cinema, as far as I've seen, don't shatter. They may be burdened until crushed or turn toxic viral, but there is very little denial or chaotic madness that can follow from it. The psychology displayed in City of God is remarkable in this. Last one, I promise. One criticism of City of God is that the characters are not well developed. I think this criticism misses the point because the film is inherently a character study, albeit not any human character. It's a study of the titular favela in which all human characters live, who shape and define the favela in life inside of it. Beyond that, I also think the movie is interesting for what seems to be oddly well mature or perhaps grounded thematic exploration of nature of ambition. A lot of traditional American cinema is about following your heart, fighting your way to the top, going after big goals. But this movie depicts intense, unrestrained ambition as self-destruction. The teenagers at the start of the movie don't just want to settle for a quiet life in favela. They want to get rich, do drugs, screw girls, and also be get out by any means necessary, which gets them killed. Similarly, Lose isn't satisfied with being just any hood. He wants to be the baddest fucking hood Rio has ever seen, which ultimately gets him killed. Knockout Ned doesn't want to just kill Lose for revenge. He wants to take literally everything he has, which ultimately gets him killed. Then we see the Runts talking about how now there will be the biggest, baddest hoods in all of Brazil, and how they're going to kill anyone and everyone they don't like, including the Red Brigade, foreshadowing what will eventually be their own violent end. And then there's Rocket. Rocket wants to be a world-famous journalist whose pictures get on the front page of every newspaper. But he settles for an internship instead, and we see him both literally and symbolically walk out of the favela alive and well into Rio. Happy I decided to look for other people's notes on this movie because this is how I feel. So again, I thought this was just going to be a love story wrapped up in gang violence. And a couple things before I get my notes that I noticed about that I was feeling when I was watching this movie. One is so beautifully shot. I love to see how sweaty everybody is because everybody doesn't have air conditioner everywhere. How not like dirty, but like real it is. Like, I guess dirty is in it, but like people aren't super polished in this movie. And that just really represents the life that a lot of people live. I love how it's like a rarity when somebody's very serious. Like how nobody has jobs, nobody really goes to school, and everybody's just trying to get by. Like that's what I really just noticed is the nuances that these people in Brazil live compared to the United States. Unfortunately, because this is a Western colonizer country, the poverty and the destruction that happens to United States citizens gets overlooked because as a whole, it's the American dream. We have these big, beautiful lives. We have these big houses and these cars and these 9 to 5s and these white picket fence and the cute dog and the boy and the girl child. But individual as human beings, we are struggling. It may not look like that where people are running outside barefoot and people aren't going to school, but like people, in the same way that gun violence has ruined the neighborhoods in the city of God, the same exact thing happened at the same exact time over here in the United States. Places like New York, Miami, Los Angeles, these are some of the major cities, like Rio's a major city in Brazil, that while on the outside looks like a cool tourist destination and you want to go there on vacation, people that live in these places are dying. You know, this is during the crack epidemic, the 70s to the 80s, that basically affected the United States and all of the Latin American countries. People were just getting killed left and right because of the wars going on within the gangs. People were being strung out on drugs, innocent people just dying. It just really shows that, like, the violence that happens in the United States is not taken as serious, or it's not pitied. It's not seen as like, because like when I saw this, I was like, these people are victims. Like they're victims of their environment. They have no way out. It's like, what else can they do other than be partying and sell drugs? Like the cycle repeated itself a lot of times through everybody's like growing up stage and somebody dying and another person reigning it throughout this movie. And that happens here in the United States, but because we're a Western country, it's kind of like y'all are just lazy and just choosing the easy way out by just doing drugs and doing, like, there's just some people, it doesn't matter the circumstances, like there's no way out for them. Like the circumstances they end up being in, it's just a product of their environment. It's just inevitable for some people. And to go back to the movie and my notes, first I want to talk about the storytelling in this movie was impeccable. I love how we would be introduced to a character briefly and they'd be like, but we ain't ready for them yet. Wait a little longer and we'll get into the backstory of them. I love movies that are not linear. It's not like this is this person and this is what they mean and this, like, it's like we'll show you a little bit of them, give you a little bit of taste, and then we'll come back to it. Or we'll show a scene, like the movie started at the end of the movie and then we got the whole story of how it ended up there. That's my favorite type of storytelling in general. I love movies that are not linear. The storyline, beautiful. It was shot beautiful. Everybody looked so beautiful. That's another thing I kept saying. Like, even through all the ugliness that was happening, it was just beautiful to watch. And that sounds terrible because nothing about what was happening was beautiful. You know, there's people getting murdered, there's people getting arred, there's people getting beat up, being strung out on drugs, losing their loved ones. So nothing about it was beautiful, but it was beautiful to the eyes, if that makes sense. And that even sounds freaking crazy. Two, let's just go ahead and go on to little Z. As evil as that man was, his life, how it panned out, is exactly what happens to anybody who gets caught up in this life and becomes the big dog. And as evil as he was to everybody, you have to, not to like, and this is, when I read earlier about how when that person compared this to a Scorsese film, I feel like what differentiates this to like a regular Italian mob movie is this, like, it is very clear that these people are extremely traumatized by their lives, and this is quite literally their only way of like the path that they end up going on because of that trauma, it makes so much sense. Little Zay and how his character was portrayed, he had terrible social skills. The only happiness that you saw on his eyes was when he was ruining someone else's life. He was very traumatized as a child, from one, getting treated like the little guy. What do they call him, little dice or little deuce at the beginning? Everybody little manned him, and it didn't really get too much of his upbringing with like his family, but you could tell that he was ostracized, which is why he was running around with the gangs. He felt FOMO when they would little man him, and we're the older kids, we're gonna go do all the murdering and robbing, you just be on the lookout. That didn't sit well with him. You know, he probably left his family because they probably did the same thing to him, and then he was deemed as the ugly guy in this film. They probably little manned him in his home, and like, you know, he didn't get love and attention, and then when he tried to run with the game and create his own family, they did the same things to him, and that made him destructive and murderous to everybody. Like, every time he murdered, he had the biggest smile on his face, because that was the only time he's in control. The only time he is in control of his life is when he is being a menace and ruining everybody's life. And it got so wrapped up into that he didn't know how to socialize. He didn't know how to talk to a woman, which is why they mentioned it in the film. The only way he was able to, like, I don't know, get with women is by taking it from them, and you see that in the R scene. But I'm not at all surprised at how destructive he was, how terrible of a human being he was, because it really all started with childhood. Like, he had a traumatizing life, which ended up putting him in gangs, and then you just grew up around a lot of trauma, a lot of poverty, the government not giving an F word about all you guys. Like, it was just sad, because this is the story of so many, like, people who grow up in the United States, in the Latin American countries, any that has a lot of gang violence. This is a very common story. Like, this is what it is. But it was really interesting to watch the party scene where he didn't know how to react when a woman rejected him. When he tried to be a human being, like swallow his pride and ask somebody to dance, and it didn't go how it planned in his head, he didn't know what to do. Like, whoa, I'm not used to things not working out. I'm not used to this. So he had to take control. He had to make a fool out of the man by telling him to get naked. He had to pick a fight with his best friend and ended up getting him murdered. He had to R the girl later on because he was jealous that her boyfriend was pretty and didn't have to. His only way of being in control was instilling fear in people. So when the girl rejected him, he wasn't in control. So the way he's gaining back control was killing people and making a mockery of them. So that was just really interesting to watch. Benny's death, I seen that the moment that Benny became the cool guy, the moment he became liked, I seen his death coming from a mile away. I thought it was gonna be Lil Zay that got jealous and murdered him. I didn't see him getting hit randomly in a drive-by situation, like, to be his death. I thought Lil Zay was gonna kill him, but the moment you become, like, you can't be the bad and the good guy at the same time. You can't be good cop and bad guy. You gotta be one or the other. You can't be out here murdering all these people and ruining all these people's lives. They'd be like, oh yeah, like, come hang out with me, I'm the party guy. And then say, you wanna leave? Because Lil Zay, as powerful as he was, he really leaned on him. Like, they were best friends. That were, his, just, you know, Benny's head was a little bit on straight than Lil Zay's. It was, I like, it was a sad death, but it was like, he's going to be his path. He was not going to live long because of, and it's bad that I feel sad for him, because he was a murderer too. He was out here killing. He just wasn't as lethal as Lil Zay or whatever. But that death was so predictable. The moment he became liked, he got his hair dyed, he wanted to start looking fresh, I know he was going to be dead. Yeah, that you can't be the good guy and the bad guy. Like, it just, not in that world at least. Knockout Ned, I say I'm disappointed in his character, but it's really annoying how men only care about what other men feel about them. When his girlfriend got R'd and he said, I can't look at her anymore, all of my empathy for the humiliation by Little Zay and all that went out the window, because he cared more about the perception of being with the woman that's no longer pure. He's not the only one that's touched her. When she just got assaulted in the most foul possible way, humanly possible way, and all he could think about is, I can't believe he did that to me. I mean, I can't believe that that happened to her, and why didn't he kill me to put me, like, you are the least violation happened to you in this situation. That you are the least violated, and all you could think about is, how could he do that? I can't look at her, I can't. Oh, and then that turned him corrupt. Like, in the beginning, how he joined the gang, he was like, okay, but we're not going to kill innocent people. Again, you can't be the good guy and the bad guy. These type of situations, like growing up in destruction like this and gang violence, you end up getting corrupt. It's like when people who want to be a police officer to save and help communities, and then they end up becoming corrupt because the system is corrupt. It's rigged from the get-go. You can't be the good guy in a situation that is inherently evil. You can't be a good politician. You can't be a good cop. You can't be a good drug lord. You can't be a good gangster. Like you got to be one or the other. So he ended up, becoming corrupt, and that became his downfall at the end of the movie. Another thing of how these people, like I mentioned, like Little Zay's downfall was just like so predictable because he couldn't even read. Like, these people none of them could read the articles at the end. All they could see was the pictures. These are the most powerful people in all of the city. Everybody fears them, and they can't even read. They got one man in their crew that can't even read. And then the cycle repeats when all of them die, and those other little kids took over the turf, and none of them could read. One of them asking, like, who over here can write? We'll make a list, and these are all the people we'll take out. The cycle's going to repeat. A whole bunch of uneducated people who have really no other way out of life beyond gun violence, just killing and taking over, and drugs. Like, beautifully written, beautifully shot. I couldn't think of anything that would be fixed on this film. I know somebody mentioned in that Reddit thread that the lack of, like, character development, and that's what happens when you compare a movie to a Scorsese film, because those are fake stories, right? Well, no, a lot of them are real, but, like, a lot of them are, like, very much more about the aesthetics of the Italian mob than the truth, give or take. Because you wanting a character developed, this is real life. The cycle repeats, and it's repeating. People grow up in a very traumatized environment. Their only way out is through a gang. That ends up being their demise, and then another generation sees that they're traumatized, and what is there to develop? The development starts with white supremacy. The development starts with fucking Ronald Reagan and this fucking crack epidemic. They're like, what is this, a fucking percent? But, like, the development would be the governments actually helping the people that they very much are filtering with these violent. I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but, like, this was such a good movie. I was blindsided. I'm thinking this might be a love story and some regular drugs. I'm taken away. This is probably one of my favorite movies ever now. Like, my God.